Cerberus. Welcome, everybody, to the DM Vault. My name is Jake. I'm joined here by this big, handsome hunk of Lance Corporal by the name of Nacho. And we have a show that we're really excited to do as a longtime D&D player and fan. The one thing you never really think about, because they're always just kind of there, is the dice. And through the beautiful contacts we made through the people at One Drop for Flint, we got to have a little bit of interaction with our first guest, Mark, also known as Ice Cream Dice on Twitter. And he brought along his manufacturer slash, what else would you be considering?
Supply manufacturer, fulfillment, Kickstarters, everything basically, apart from selling the dice.
Yeah, so we've got both of them here today, and we're covering a lot. We got a lot of ground to cover today, so let's just dive right into it. Before we start talking about a lot of the very interesting things that have been developing lately in the dice world that has to do with a particular squid-shaped creature from the depths, let's start with your guys' actual history with Dungeons and Dragons and how you guys got into, basically the world of dice making. So let's start with you, Mark. You make some very pretty, very sexy dice. The shoots have been coming out for the root beer float and the cream soda, and those are very, very handsome dice, if I do say so myself. But how did you get involved in the tabletop RPG hobby?
So you're cutting out, but I'm guessing the general gist is, how did I get into this?
Yeah.
Okay, so I run a D&D focused nonprofit called Forging Heroes Society, and I accidentally created it. I was running D&D for some kids at the school I was working with. Oh, and sorry, I'm just going to take a quick second. Every opinion that is expressed in this interview is strictly mine, does not reflect on my wonderful crew of One Drop for Flint or the FDM No More crew either. These are all just me, okay? Don't give them flack, please.
Yeah,
Okay.
Remember,
Give it
all
to me.
personal.
I can handle it. Trust me. So I started a D&D club at the elementary school I was working at, and I reached out to Die Hard Dice and Tabletop Loot to get dice for those kids, and I started thinking, how expensive can dice be if these guys are sending me 50, 60 poly sets at a time? And would it be possible for me to raise some money and just buy like a huge lot of dice? So I started looking, and I realized that dice sometimes go as cheap as 50 some odd cents a set if you're willing to buy 1,000 sets. And that got me thinking, I don't want to give every kid that I ever play with or that ever plays in one of the groups that I support the same set of dice. So what if I made a custom set? And I started thinking about like what I hadn't seen in the dice world, what I wanted to see in the dice world, and what made me laugh. And the idea of creating a set of dice that looked like Neapolitan ice cream made me howl. I'm like, yeah, ice cream dice, done. You got ice, you got dice. And I started down that road. So I went on to Alibaba, and I put out a request for quotes and proposals and stuff like that. And I basically said what I wanted, and I fielded a few responses. And that was basically what got me started. Was I started sending out for samples, paying for samples, and next thing I knew, it went from Neapolitan to the Orange Dream to mint chocolate chip, which was supposed to be the third in my initial launch line, but took me almost a year to get right because, unbeknownst to me, speckles are a hard thing to do. So that was my entry into the world of dice design. I won't ever say I'm a dice maker, because I don't actually make dice myself. Not yet. I have everything I need to do it, except for the time, basically. So basically playing with a bunch of 9 to 11-year-olds and wanting to give them a variety of dice, and the idea of dice at a table actually being something fun and whimsical and something that you can actually kind of laugh about versus, these are my shiny math rocks and they will roll and kill you. So that was my kicker into this world that I'm now in, which is amazing.
Yeah. Um, separate question as part of just the whole experience of playing D&D. Do you prefer to DM or are you a player? Just for my own curiosity.
I've done both. I prefer to be a player. I'm not a great DM, and I ran a game, like I ran a home game for a little over a year, but I was running a published campaign, and halfway through, I hated the campaign. Just hated it. So I actually sped my entire group up, and I gave them the option of going through some of the remaining dungeons and castles or whatever the hell was in it, or just fighting the big baddie. And they handily took on Tiamat and slayed the five-headed dragon. And I really just didn't feel like running a game unless I could like do my own homebrew thing. But by that point in time, I had a newborn, I was working full-time, I was doing this dice thing, I was running a nonprofit, and I was still trying to carve out a little bit of time for myself. So the home game that I ran fell to the wayside.
You hate to see it, but that's... I know how it is now that I'm doing all this stuff now. I used to run like 3 or 4 games a week, and now I'm down to like 1, and I just tell them that they're lucky. You're lucky. You get me for 1 day a week. You are my little slice of heaven. Deck, same question to you, because I have a lot of questions about how a man ends up in China making dice. But before we even get to that step, we have got to know, how did you get into D&D or tabletop RPGs in general? Like, do you prefer to play? Are you a player? Are you a DM? What's your involvement with the hobby before you even got to dice making?
Yeah, so it's about 9-10 years ago. I used to play with a group of students as a player. Absolutely fantastic fun. I was one of those people that before I got into it thought that it's a bit too geeky. It's a bit too mathsy. It wasn't. So my girlfriend at the time took me along to a game, and we played for about 6 hours straight. I just fell in love with it. Played as a player a lot, never DM'd. Then came to China, and as most foreign people do in China, I started teaching English. I was actually an English teacher before I came here, and then I've got into a game in Beijing, and they were like, "Well, can we get some dice?" And at that time, I was probably a bit similar to Mark at the time. Like, well, we need some dice for our players. We don't want to play with the same crappy ones that we've taken from the UK here. Where can we get these dice? And we went on a bit of a hunt, which lasted about a year until we started supplying other Chinese table gaming stores and cafes with their own dice. Again, that went on for about 6 years or so, 6 or 7 years, until I got contacted by a UK dice retailer through a friend, and then started the whirlwind journey of the last year or so, helping Western dice companies and at gaming accessories, stuff like that, help them find stuff and source them from China. It's been a bit of a very quick 7-8 years since I was a player. And now I DM for a bunch of kids with a game called Power Outage, which is like a pretty good game for the kid. Yeah.
And it's up for an Ennie. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but it's Babarche, I believe. Is just like, he's a good, solid dude. When I was first starting up Forging Heroes and looking for a game that would be better for younger kids, because I really want to be able to hit the grade 1 to 3 crew as well as the grade 4 to 6 crew. He sent me everything he had to that point. It was just before his Kickstarter, like a couple of months, and I've never had a chance to play it yet, but like he's such a huge support to the community and really focused on like building a game that kids can play that's rules light and full of imagination. It's so cool. Sorry, jumping in, but I love that dude.
Yeah, so that got me into the DMing side, but then really since then I've been too busy to do any gaming myself. So it's been a few years since I was a player, but Yeah, so that's how I got into it, and I think that's my preference in regards to DMing or playing. I'm a terrible DM, but quite an imaginative player, so it's okay.
I'm a terrible DM too, but somehow I'm stronger.
Someone's gonna do it.
Yeah.
I do it
As
happily.
long as it's not me.
I enjoy the suffering for some reason. But we're currently in the golden age, I would say, of tabletop RPGs, especially D&D. We got more people playing than ever before. We got more people getting into the hobby from different sources. It's not just your older brother's weird friend with all the blacklight posters chilling out in his room, just like, you guys want to play D&D?
No, it's not.
We finally, they're Critical Role in 100 different avenues into this hobby now. And then on top of that, you have so many different people participating in the community in different ways. And I would have to say that the one that fascinates me the most is definitely the rise of the independent dice maker, because, from my perspective, as a guy who's been playing for years, I went and got my dice at the comic book store, and they were from Chessex, and I took what was in the case, and I had to deal with it, damn it. And now suddenly we've got, so many different makers, out there. Like, what's it been like from your perspective, Deck, as somebody who actually works in the production end with all these new people entering this part of the hobby? And Mark, you already touched on it a little bit, but I'd still like to just get a little bit more. What's it like interacting in this space, being a, basically a small business owner and having to sell a product and doing a Kickstarter and getting all these people interested in your stuff?
For me, I operate my business the way I operate as a human, transparent, honest, and comfortable. Well, not always comfortable, but willing to be accountable where I need to be. And one of the cool things about this particular small niche, well, it's not small in it, but I mean, it's a bit of a niche, but it's growing and growing, is that I went in with the mindset from the beginning to collaborate versus compete. There's so many people out there making so many different dice, and people get really precious over their dice and their dice designs, but let's be real, they're colored hunks of numbered plastic. Like, they're not special. They're cool and they're fun and we love them. I'm not saying that they can't have meaning or have personal worth or value to them, but the way a lot of creators were approaching things before was from this sense of preciousness. Like, you've just created the next fucking Tesla car, and they're shiny math rocks. We're not going to the moon here. So I really, hi everybody, love you. I'm outside. Oh, okay. Sorry, they're not talking to me. But one of the big things was that I went in with the mindset of promoting and being open. I jokingly in a DM conversation, actually maybe it was even public, I don't even remember, with Secret Cat House. I called myself the Dice Midwife because there is currently at least 5 to 6 projects that are either in the works, completed, or I'm working on, where I've run support and been forthright with information, passed them on to suppliers, given them, what the actual pricing looks like, because I want people to be successful. One of the things that I often say is I don't want to be alone on the mountaintop. There's a perception about me that I'm bigger than I am, and I'm still coming to kind of grips with that, but I've also realized that perception comes mostly from my vocalness over being willing to help, being willing to share information. And like, I love the fact that, somehow I've fostered and built a community around Ice Cream Dice that is supportive of, not only small makers and small businesses, but the LGBTQ plus community. I say that if it all went away, like, my highest point of pride so far is this community that I've built. I've had many people come to me and say, I didn't feel like I was being seen on Twitter, and you see me, you recognize me, you acknowledge me. People before money, people before business, people first. Like, it makes good sense to treat people well. And ultimately that leads to good business. They enjoy supporting me because they know what they're getting, first off, and there's no corporate image here. There's none, right? Like, I'm not doing shit because I think it's good for my brand. I'm doing things because I think it's good for the community, or I like them. I was like, hey, ice cream float dice would look really cool. How do I do that? Or Mystic Dragon Games, they're running a Kickstarter. They're like, hey, we really like the way you've done dice. Would you do dice for us? Sure. Was it a business transaction? Absolutely. I made some money off it, and I will make some money off of it. But it's not a lot. I'm not buying a yacht from it, but being able to foster that community and have that trust in people. Like, one of the things that blows my mind is that people have put all this trust in me, and technically I've been online as a business for a year, but like the business part of things only kicked off in February. I mean, March, April, May, June, July, like 5 months. And it's humbling and it's flattering. And I'm just so stoked to be able to find my own creative outlet that I have been desperately searching for over a decade. I bought a box of electronic shit because I was going to make synths. I went to school for graphic design because I wanted to freelance, because I wanted to be able to work from home or work for myself. I was very, very tired of working for other people. So, and I'm rambling and I don't care.
It's okay.
Your Clips guy's going to hate me. That's okay. But yeah, like, ultimately the rise of the dice makers comes from the access to supplies, the community that the handmade dice makers make amongst themselves, the community that they include me in often. And for me personally, it's a community that I've built where I've done interviews where I've sat alongside Libris Arcana, Monstrous Incantation, who makes amazing dice, and then James from Orkin Sea Game Works, who, before he launched his Kickstarter, reached out to me, and he's a fellow Canadian, so we had some chats. I didn't help him with the dice design at all. That is 100% him, but I helped him in terms of where I thought he could make some changes to ensure the success of his Kickstarter, and ultimately it was successful. Little Dragon Corp is another fellow Canadian, and she did the Hidden Gem dice. And when I was first getting into this, she reached out to me and has been people share their information with me in a way that is open and honest, and like, to me, it's just the right thing to give it back. At this point, because I'm so busy, when people reach out and they're like, hey, where do I go to find dice? I tell them that they need to do that little bit of legwork first, and then I can help them. I can't take you from the first step. You got to show a little bit of ambition and drive and initiative to do that. No pun intended, but pun totally intended. Show that you really want to do this, and then I will help you make it the best it possibly can be and be as successful. I help people. Yeah, I have people in Sweden, England, US, and Canada that I know off the top of my head that I've helped with either their dice designs or their Kickstarter specifically. More often than not, the Kickstarter, but that's, to me, what makes the community so great, and is this like exchange of information and genuine support, rather than just kind of like a fake signal boost where it's like, oh yeah, I'll retweet your stuff if you retweet mine, and then like at the moment those retweets no longer seem mutual, people just kind of drop off and stop supporting. Like, no, my support's genuine. If I like what you're doing, I don't care what it is, I want other people to see it, because we can all make money doing the creative things that we love to do, and it just takes a little bit of work together.
Yeah.
You know. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm going to step away and close the glass door.
I'll take over then. So I think Mark hit it on the head when he said rise of the dice makers. So the last 2 years, we've been slowly working with more and more Western dice retailers and dice designers, and what we've found is things have gone less the way of suppliers like HD Dice, who I think people were used to going to somebody like HD Dice, having a look, see what dice they have, buying that, giving it a name and stocking it in their store. What we've seen over the last 2 years, which has been a massive change on the Western side rather than a change in the Chinese side, which is where most of the dice are made. We'll get to that later. Is that dice retailers and dice designers are wanting to produce and design their own dice rather than sell what is already out there. And I think for the last 2 years, that's been the most exciting thing for us. Is instead we used to have people come to us and say, "What dice do you sell?" And now people come up to us and say, "Can I make these? Is this possible?" And I think leading the way with that is all the DIY dice makers themselves. So you got like the Dice Maniacs Facebook group, and you just look, if you want to see what's happening in the future, you just look into those groups, see what they're making.
Yeah.
And the factories this end are having to catch up. Like they are a little bit overwhelmed at the moment, but that's the way the dice industry's gone the last couple of years. So definitely rise of the dice makers, which there we go, which I think it make a good movie title, but also it's sort of almost like era defining, which I think the industry's going that way. Like Mike said, people support each other in the industry, and like we work with other industries in other areas a little bit, and it's all about business, about making money. Whereas in this industry, it's sort of working out who's nice, who's more helpful, and trying to push the community to like, hey, let's support those guys instead of other guys. And you know, I think the community in itself is very helpful, very giving, and we're seeing successful dice companies are those that are the same, who are giving. And I just think it's the last 2 years the industry's totally changed. Like you mentioned, you used to just get your Chessex dice and that's what you were dealt with. Now you've got all of these different creators. Everyone's coming out with different things. Well, we must have maybe 10 or 12 different companies doing their own lines of dice. So it's really taking off, and it's such an amazing community and industry to be in because of all the people too. So yes, it's fascinating at the moment.
Yeah.
There you go, Mark.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Speaking
Like
to some of those,
I got introduced to Deck after my original fulfillment partner I had to sever ties with, and Grady from D and Dice in the UK reached out to me and was like, "Hey, I think I can probably handle your EU stuff. If that would be helpful." And he spent probably 2-3 hours compiling a list of prices for me, and then eventually he said, he's like, actually, I think you'd be better off like just working with my fulfillment partner, and that's how Deck and I were introduced. So, and Grady and I had no interaction before that. Like, obviously he'd been seeing my stuff, and he just reached out and he's like, "I just want to see, like a good person who's also a dice designer be successful." And here we are now talking to you, and it's because people are willing to be a little bit open and helpful in our community. I don't even want to call it an industry. I mean, what we make and what we sell is an industry, but what we do together is definitely community focused.
Yeah,
Right.
definitely.
yeah, no, the big old wheelhouse that is the Dungeons and Dragons community and the tabletop RPG community as a whole, has just grown in scope and in scale. So I have a couple of questions I really want to aim at Deck because, again, it's so fascinating, that side of it, like, and everything that you've set up to this point. Like, I'm honestly surprised. And hey, if you're an indie movie maker and you're looking to make a big splash, a fucking documentary on like the dice world would actually be fascinating, because there's so much weird things happening right now. with it. But
Yeah.
at the same time,
That's just from your point of view. You should. Some of the stuff that happens in China is crazy. It's
actually,
really, really ridiculous.
no, please tell me about right now. Tell me about some stuff that happens in China. Walk me through, from the both of you. Like, let's, explain it to me like I'm a fifth grader. Because I started to do research like this, but then I remembered Mark is a teacher, so he can speak to that inner idiot that I have and just make this very simple. And so from the start of your process, like Mark, your side. So how do you design the dice, and then they get to deck, and then what is your A, B, C, as far as that process goes, and then when they get back to Mark, let's go through the process on how these math rocks get made.
So, unlike many creators and creatives, I don't draw, I don't do anything on my computer. Every single dice design you've ever seen has come straight from my head. I once jokingly did a shitty, slightly better than a stickman sketch of what I want the float design to look like, to jokingly show that it's my advanced method. So the biggest challenge, and this is where I think Kraken ran into their issues with the renders versus the real thing, is that in order to design dice, you have to work through 3 different color systems, 2 different color systems, and materials. So the way it works is everything we see on our screens is rendered in RGB, reds, greens, and blues. But in order to get colors for dice, you need to send in Pantone colors. But in China, it's really weird because there is a specific Pantone book for plastics, but they choose to use solid coated, which is specifically designed for print and graphic design. So you're essentially trying to take a color that you see on your screen, get that as close as you can to one that you would see on paper, and then try and imagine what that would look like once it's melted plastic. So everyone sees colors in different ways. So for me, I learned after my first couple of samples that the shades I wanted were typically 1 or 2 tones off of the initial one that I thought. So my first Neapolitan were a very pale pink, I call it like a fudge brown versus a chocolate brown. And so what I do then is once I've got those colors kind of determined as closely as I can, I will talk to a factory. Or, well, actually, no, I'll talk to a company, because Westerners, we don't get direct access to the factory. And then I basically say, this is what I want the dice to look like. These are the Pantone colors. So, for example, the Neapolitan, I don't remember all the colors off the top of my head, but basically it was layer of Pantone color, XXX for pink. Then I want a layer of white. Then I want a layer of Pantone color XXX for brown. So I send them that information, and then I give them money, and they make me samples. They typically will send me a factory shot. I can tell you there are. I don't have too many dice disasters, but I've got a couple. I really screwed up my first go at candy corn this year, because I went with I wanted to try and stay away from black because it's just too expected, but ultimately that's what I went with, and it looks great. But I want to go with like a pumpkin stem green, and the green that I got, which should have been similar to your logo, ended up looking kind of like the green on this bottle, so nothing like it at all, but that was a learning curve.
Yeah.
So I just said, nope, this isn't any good. I want the same yellow, orange, and white, but I want it with black numbers. So at that point in time, I send money and my information off to someone in China, and then I wait, depending on the company that I'm working with. The average time I would say is 6 to 8 weeks for a sample to get here. My second mint chocolate chip with dark numbers, which should have been, that one took well over 2 months, and it shouldn't have, because they already had all the existing information. And then the dice came. The numbers are good, but the base color got screwed up. Anyways, so I send my information out, I send the money, and then I get then Deck can take over because he knows what happens after this. I don't. It's magic.
It is, yeah. Basically, we have small elves who come in.
Yep.
No. So what we do is, so basically, Mark, those guys give us the color. We'll have a chat with them. Do you want to swirl? Do you want it dropped in? What sort of effect are you after? And then they give us the money for the samples. Then we go to the factory, and it normally takes about. So the simple version is, yeah, we get the money. We go to the factory, tell them the same thing that you've told us. They take 6 to 8 weeks to make the samples, and we send them to you. That's what it looks like from the outside. What actually happens is we get the pictures, either pictures or the Pantone colors, the description of what they want. We'll go to the factory, and then the factory will say, well, we need that in a 3D computer design, or we need that drawn out. So we'll go in, we'll go back, draw it. 2 days later, we'll go back to them with this, and they'll say, oh, well, we said we could do that, but actually we can't do that. So then we have to sort of discuss with them different ways, maybe go down to the factory, visit them, show them how to do it, twist their arm. Then they'll put the price up. Then they'll put the price down. And then about 1 or 2 weeks into this whole shenanigans, really, basically, just this whole back and forth between us and the factory, then they'll say, okay, yes, we'll make these samples for you. And then we're like, okay, everything's fine. They'll come back 2 or 3 or 4 weeks later and say, well, and you'll go to them, well, where are these samples? And they're like, oh, those samples. Well, we've done them about 2 weeks ago. Do you want to see them? We're like, yes. And would you like to say, yes, we'd like you to send them to us. We normally get them, normally about 50% of the samples come back looking absolutely crap. Totally not what we asked for. We have to go back to them and start the whole process again, which is why sometimes it might take 2 months to 3 months. There are cases where other people have to wait 6 or 7 months. I would suggest that's more likely to the fact that there is a little bit of foul play going on with some of the styles that people come up with. What I mean by that is, so for example, Mark comes up with a really nice, beautiful style. The factory make it, and they see that it looks nice. What they'll do is, instead of sending that straight to me, they would send it to one of their preferred suppliers, which normally has a stake in the factory. So, naming names, somebody like HD Dice, they have a stake in the factory. They'll send them to HD Dice, give them, say, look, do you like these dice? We can make them for you as well. And then they'll all get made at the same time. So Mark will get his dice, a wholesaler will get the same set of dice, which is why you do find quite a lot of copies of the same styles, or like a wholesale will be selling something that looks very similar to something that's already come out. So that's sort of the behind the scenes of, hey, little baby, that's nice.
Look at that little
sort of
nugget. We're just going to take 20 seconds
Let's not
for
talk
nugget
about
appreciation.
Yeah.
That is
Hello,
a beautiful
Damien.
baby. Back to how dice are made. Keep going, Dick.
Do you want me?
Yeah, so that goes on. The sort of the dark arts, so just to be dramatic, but so that's sometimes why they're delayed, because they'll be shared with preferred wholesalers first, designs. Another reason why they'll be delayed is because preferred suppliers will get their samples pushed to the front of the queue, behind people like us who are slightly smaller, and all those things create problems for the dice designers, but all of these problems are sort of shielded mostly by people like us, because we don't want to cause problems for the makers. So yeah, it's not pretty, and dice companies in China do try to sort of fuck each other over in regards to blocking supplies for those people. So yeah, but I call it an industry in China because they don't really give a crap about D&D or tabletop gaming.
Right.
For them, it's all about the money.
Yeah, they're just pumping out.
So they're just pumping it out. But when it gets to people like, so then we get the samples back, it will go back to Mark, who will then disappear.
Well, actually, no. I do have a couple of questions though about like some of the China end stuff too. Like exactly how big of an industry is it in China? Like, is there like 4 or 5 factories and it's a cornered market, or is it like there are tons of factories of various sizes and stuff, and you have various people that you can work with? Like you have, you know, A, B, and C options to go through.
We stick to plastic dice, I guess. Seeing as there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I just stick with plastic dice because that's sort of what Mark does and what most people are interested in, I think. So for plastic, so you've got 2 different types of plastic. You've got acrylic and resin. Acrylic are cheaper, and normally you just get 2 color swirls or the pearlescent ones, the marble-looking ones. They're acrylic. They're all injection molded, and all the rest are resin poured into silicon molds. Very similar to how people make them at home, just done on an industrial scale. There's 2 main factories in China in the same place that make nearly all the dice that you see that are not Chessex. There are smaller ones that have just started up recently, given the whole Kickstarter successes over the last year, but they are so small that they're really insignificant compared to these 2 factories. These 2 factories are in part owned by some of the big wholesalers that people will know, but the big wholesalers do not make the dice. Despite what they say, they do not make dice. Nobody in the West talks to anybody who makes dice. They all talk to people like us who are intermediaries. So in that respect, it's just 2 factories really that make all the dice.
Here, let me touch on that one for a quick moment, just sort of as a proof. So my first go at mint chocolate chip, I ordered my sample through HD Dice. Wasn't happy with the communication. Finally got the samples, and they were this weird jade green with brown chunks of resin in it. And I was like, okay, like they were poorly made. Some of the brown chunks were actually like poking through the green resin and stuff like that. What HD didn't know was that, and what I didn't know was that they didn't have their own factories. Was I talked to Top Imprint, who ultimately is the middleman for my Kickstarter line, and I sent them the exact same specifications, and I got the exact same dice. So I got the jade green with the brown chunks. But now here's the weird part: when I got it from HD, they told me how they made the dice, which was they made miniature versions of the polyhedral set in brown and then smashed the shit out of them and dropped them in resin. Now, that's a pretty unique approach to things, and I don't think 2 independent factories could absolutely replicate that, hand over hand. And they're identical other than the ink color, because I switched the ink color so I would know which sample came from who. Otherwise I wouldn't have known. And but yeah, it was one of the things that Deck opened my eyes to, as and I wasn't surprised, because after I saw this HD thing, after I saw 2 mint chocolate chips that are identical and very strangely made. You can see them if you look up my semi Twitter account, Goblin Dice. They're there. But
we get a lot of people who have gone to I'm just going to say names because it's easier to say names.
Yeah.
They've gone to somebody like HD Dice, and they've gone and said, well, we've got some samples made with them, and then we're going to maybe Dice and Miniatures. We've got some samples made with them, and I'm like, and then they're asking me, can we get some dice made with Cerberus? And I'm like, no, I'm not going to make samples for you, because you're just going to get the same stuff from the same factory.
Yeah.
You might as well just send me the samples you've already got, and we'll put a dice order in for you. So people do get conned is a bit of a strong word, but people do get misled into buying different samples, what they perceive as different samples from different places, but they're not. Another way you can sort of see this is you might ask a dice wholesaler for photos of a factory. They will provide the same photos from the same factories, but none of them are actually a factory. So, yeah.
Exactly.
A little bit.
Exactly how many people are doing your job, Deck? Like, how many would you say intermediaries? Because I find that really interesting that there's basically just You know.
I mean,
Oh
off the
God.
off the top of my head, I know maybe 10 or 15, but
Yeah, I was gonna say at least a dozen.
yeah, we're the only foreigner owned one, but there are some that are like part owned by foreigners, but they are essentially all Chinese businesses.
Right.
Some of them interconnected, some of them are the same people with different names. Um, so you go to one person, it's actually the same as the other people. But I would say between 10 and 15 big enough ones that people may have worked with back in the West.
Oh, okay. Um, any really fun, wacky stories from just having to deal with, because there's a language barrier. There's,
Mhm.
always going to be communication failures in business, even when everybody speaks the same language. So I can see how at some point something could just go really, really south, really, really quick, and nobody having any really bearing on it. You got any fun stories from the factory floor, so to speak?
Oh, fun.
And by
Most of them
fun,
are
I mean
not fun.
nightmarish.
No, fun as in nightmare.
Yeah, yeah. As in, now that you look
So
back at it, that was ridiculous.
let me have a think. Um, just the lack of imagination from some of the factories. So you go to them and you'll say, "Well, we want something that's a swirl," and then you end up going there and they'll okay. The most fun things that we normally have is they'll just go into production and make stuff for you without you actually confirming it. So like, okay, well, we want a mold, and then we'll make you, and then we say, well, you put the idea up, they'll send you a quote, and then they'll just go ahead without your approval, and you end up going there and like, wow, this mold is wrong, these numbers are wrong, and then they'll charge you for it. Fun stories. Uh, we do have to Chinese ways of doing business, we do have to go visit the factories quite often. The Chinese way of doing business is quite fun. Basically, we go out for dinner and we all get drunk, and then at the end of the dinner we'll make all our business decisions and prices and stuff like that. So yeah, it can be quite fun sometimes when we do those. I have in occasion drank 80% rice wine and sort of passed out in the shower. So that was quite fun.
But you got the deal, though. That's the important thing.
Yeah, as long as you get the
We did-
deal, live or be damned.
We
You
got-
have to. You have to
We got
see.
20%. We got 20% off on the dice, so it was worth it.
Uh,
Yeah, I think that's the fun side of it is Chinese business can be a bit backstabby and cutthroaty, but at the same time, so our job as intermediaries is to build those relationships up. And yeah, I guess I could invite Mark over and get him drunk on 80% alcohol and maybe get him to pay a bit more. I'm not sure.
Yeah, you could, or maybe I'd let you get drunk. We would basically settle the age-old question: does the Irishman or the Englishman drink better? Right?
Mm.
And then
Americans
I
can
might
sit
get a
in on
deal.
it.
Also, I don't think you're gonna have Twitch going, but Deck, you're getting a lot of love. I like that.
Am I? I
Yeah.
haven't got Twitch.
lot of deck love in the chat right now. Chat is popping out, but we've had steady streaming conversation for a little over an hour, so we haven't gotten to touch on them.
Yeah, we're getting some gems. Like Deck's great with communication. Deck's fantastic. Deck's a party animal.
Yeah, which
I am. Yeah.
I did want to step in on that because Chinese business sounds way less like business and more like a meeting of pirates.
Yeah. Yeah. There are.
Yeah, it totally is. It's basically, am I going to rob your ship or are you going to rob mine?
I'll take a picture of my leather guy. He actually has a patch.
Oh,
So
that's
that'd be
awesome.
quick.
Nice. Well, you got to show your work, right? You got to show your handicraft.
Yeah.
Yeah. So next business, they want me to live stream it, do they?
Oh, that would be fantastic. Again, there is a good money documentary to be made about the wacky world of dice making in China. I feel it in my bones.
I just want to sit in on one of those meetings.
Yeah, I just want to drink with Chinese businessmen now. That's
they're
has
hot.
been fostered.
Just start making dice, man. and then tell them you want to go over and have a face to face, and that problem solved. You get to answer all these things, and all you gotta do is bring a camcorder with you, right, or your phone, film that shit, and boom, you've got your documentary, your dice business, and you partied with Chinese businessmen all at the same time.
Here, do you want to hire us in, and then we can all just go through this process together?
Yeah, gang, we're setting this up for next year. We're going to China. We're going to China. It's happening. So, we do have a couple of questions from Twitter, too, we want to pop into before we get to what I believe everybody's been hankering for.
The meat and potatoes.
The meat and potatoes of today's show. And that, a couple of them I want to get to. So, one of them is from Celestina Kitty 5. This one is aimed at Mark. What do you gain your inspiration from for dice? Where do you gain your inspiration from for dice? I am a writer myself, so I'm always curious what other artists gain from it. Keep up the good work. Thank you. Love, emoji.
All right. So my inspiration, honestly, just kind of, I want shit that's fun. Like one of my goals, and this kind of ties into how old this industry is at 40 years plus now, is that for the longest time it was male dominated, and every industry catered, or almost every business catered to men. I won't host a game at my house if there's not a female at the table. I love having women in the hobby. I love the rise of women DMs, adventure writers, and all this other stuff. So I really wanted to make a product that not only appealed to women, but appealed to moms and parents. Like, I would be happy to send kids with my dice. You know what I mean? Whereas, like, I don't want them necessarily going with, a set of blood spatter dice, for example. Not that I don't like those dice, but that's not necessarily what I want to send my kid to a game store with to play D&D or whatever. So my inspiration really comes from what I think is fun, what I think is whimsical, what I think is going to make people laugh or smile. Part of the reason of what I do is, for most people in the world, I'm going to say most people in North America, in the Western world, ice cream specifically typically evokes some sort of happy memory, some sense of nostalgia, and being able to provoke those nostalgic moments and those happy memories is something that I love. Like, I love when I've seen it a fair bit with the float dice, more so than the other ones, is that, people are like, oh man, like root beer float, I haven't had one of those since I had one with my grandma, and like all these neat sort of personal connections that they have to what the design represents. Like it, so my inspiration basically, and I'm going to be honest, the food world is an untapped dice design nightmare / gold mine. I've been asked numerous times to do gummy dice, gummy dice designs. One of the first people I talked to from the UK wanted to do gummy dice designs, and I told him flat out, I'm like, you know what? That was what I was going to do next after these ones launch, but I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you a year. I will give you a year head start, and if you've got your stuff done, you've got your stuff done, and I will stay away from your designs. If you don't, then I consider it fair play. And he was like, cool, totally done. Right? Like, everywhere.
If you launch the gummy dice designs, will you do a promo where you actually make gummy dice?
No, I would never do a promo where I actually make gummy dice. That is phase 2 or phase 3 of the ice cream dice empire. Is to actually, I'm not even kidding. Is to actually find a way to make candy dice. Whether it's, I would prefer gummies because they are my weakness and they are my favorite. People have approached me about scented dice. And I've leaned away from that every single time, but I think I might eventually try it and see what happens. I always say I'm not going to do limited editions, and I might occasionally do limited runs. That might be one of the few that would almost be a limited edition, or at least a very limited run to probably 1 to 2,000 sets. Which,
I know
yeah,
I'd love some edible dice.
And I mean, just as a Michigan boy, I would definitely have to throw in there a recommendation, like the root beer float, but it's a local thing we got. It's
Superman.
there's Superman ice cream, and then there's also Tin Roofs, which are vanilla ice cream, and Verner's, which is a Michigan ginger ale.
yeah, Michigan soda, yep.
Which is magic.
The
I'm gonna stop and get one on the way home.
Superman ice cream is one of my top three most requested ice creams to do are birthday cake Superman, and Spumoni was a huge one for a long time. I decided after Kraken released their Spumoni, I would give them till the end of the calendar year to sell it, and then I would make my own at some point in time because, well, their ice cream line was pastel, but I don't know anyone who's ever wanted a pastel brown. I mean, they sold out of everything, so obviously there was people that wanted them, but not my deal. Anyways, so
Yeah.
eventually I'll come out with a Spumoni. Eventually I'll come out with a Superman. I'm gonna work with Deck on a way to do a birthday cake. My voice will probably crack a few times because this is our five. No, how long did we chat earlier, Deck? Like 2 hours, right? Yeah, I went from chatting with Deck for like 2 hours to streaming for 3 hours to this, which is now almost 1 hour in.
Yeah.
So my voice will probably crack and break a bit, but yeah, I definitely want to do a Superman ice cream, and I definitely want to do a birthday cake ice cream. Speckles and spots and chunks are just they're a huge challenge that Chessex is known for their speckled designs, but they haven't released a new one since 2004. Apparently, they're releasing some new ones this year because they had a dedicated factory to speckled dice, and the guy who ran that factory died, and along with him, most of his information and his recipes, I guess, for lack of a better word, went with him.
The art of sorry, that's kind of fascinating that the art of making a particular kind of dice almost died with somebody.
Isn't it crazy? The only reason it's coming back is because they found some of his old supplies or a recipe or something.
They should be handed down from one generation to the next. Like red.
But like, to me, that was mind blowing because obviously you can still get the Chessex dice, like they're still producing them, but the fact that they actually haven't released a single new line since 2004 it really put things into perspective. Why my mint chocolate chip was such a nightmare to get done. Right, like I went through four samples by the time it was finally done and got to my final one. Anyway, so yeah, so that's where I get my inspiration from is what makes me laugh, what makes me chuckle. Food is an easy one because the palettes are already there. I'm a former graphic designer, so taking something that already exists and making it look better is my wheelhouse. I can't draw you a picture. I can draw you a reasonably rendered 3-dimensional cube, but that's about it. Oh, and a stick man.
Another question that we got from Twitter when it got thrown out there by Mark, which thank you for that, Mark. I love your initiative on everything with us. What fundamentally beyond material differentiates acrylic and resin dice? Are there pros and cons of each, and which do you prefer to deal with? That is from Start Racings on Twitter. Deck, what you got for us on that? Because that is a you question.
Cool. So yeah, you got acrylic is injection molded. The Chinese factories only have 2-color injection molds, but they're cheap and they're fast, and you can use pigments and dyes, different colors. The main positive thing about acrylic is they're cheap and relatively efficient to make. Resin is all hand poured. They're not handmade, they're hand poured into large silicon molds, about, this big times 10. They're all poured in there, open face, and then they're like industrially processed afterwards and engraved with the number on top. Resin is more fun to work with. It's more expensive to work with. So the prices can go from 50 cents for an acrylic set, up to maybe 10, up to 10 times more, depending on the amount of stuff that has to go into it, and what sort of engraving work needs done. The prices vary dramatically from one factory to the next, depending on what you want doing. But essentially resin is what everything is made from now. Chesics are slightly different. They're ahead of the game. I really do have a lot of respect for what they do, coming up with new ideas, new mixtures and stuff. They have much more advanced injection molding machines. So from a Chesic's point of view, they're able to put much more colors into their swirls, use slightly different kinds of acrylic to get different effects. Again, it's cheap and quick, but they're slightly more ahead of it because they've been doing it for so long. But yeah, so that's the main difference between acrylic and resin. Visually, you might not be able to tell the difference, but anything that's layered, anything that's more than two colors, anything that's a mixture of solid color and transparent color, anything that has drops or smoky looking stuff in, that's all your resin stuff. So basically what everybody likes is resin at the moment.
Yeah, most of the time. There's a couple. I don't know what factory has it, but there is a factory that in China has just recently started doing 4-color acrylics, because I've gotten approached by them like, hey, we now do 4-color acrylics, cool, and they look like shit. From a dice designer perspective, the difference between acrylic and resin. So to put things in perspective, my float line is all resin. I had to ask for a bunch of different techniques. The factory initially didn't want to make them for me. They said, we can technically make those, but we don't think it'll work. And I had to say, you know what? I'm willing to pay for it. If it works, then we keep going. If it doesn't work, then I will reconfigure my design, and I'll order more samples. So the techniques that are combined in my float is glitter, vapor, nebula, whatever you want to call it, swirls, or like the wispy shit is what I call it, an opaque layer and a transparent layer. So you will often see HD has some beautiful dice that are transparent resin with vapors in them. I sell them on my site because it's a good way for me to make a little bit of money while I'm waiting for all my stuff to get produced, and they're gorgeous. I like them. But from a designer perspective, acrylic is so limiting. But for my Kickstarter lineup, 6 of the 8 designs were ultimately acrylic. The only 2 of mine that are resin are the Rainbow and the Neapolitan. I tried resin for a couple of them, but when you swirl resin, the colors tend to bleed into one another, so it basically makes a big murky muddy mess. It's essentially like being a little kid and painting with every color that you can all at once, and ultimately it ends up like a swamp brown, mud brown. So it was that kind of a thing. Actually, my first butterscotch that ended up just being like yellow with like a little bit of white here and there, those were resin. I tried to get them to swirl 3 colors of resin. I wanted a light brown, a golden yellow to give off that real buttery feel, and then white. And they ended up just looking like popcorn. I think, oh yeah, I did give all those sets away. Oh shit, I owe a couple of people sets. Anyways, but yeah, from a design perspective, you're going to pay more for resin than you are for acrylic, for sure. But the level of finesse that you can do with it, and the level of detail in your design is significantly higher, and it's still limited because you're dealing with major factories in China that don't really want to, they don't want to be creative. They want to keep pumping out millions of dice the way they have been, and making their money.
So the factories, we get approached like, oh, we want to make some that look like this, some that look like that. We go to the factory, and the factory say, well, we don't want to do that. We can, but we don't want to do it because we already sell millions of sets of dice doing it the way we do it. Why do we need to add gold flakes? Why do we need to put something in the dice? Why do we need to use a Borealis glitter? Why? We said, well, because the customers want it. We said, but what's the point? So then that's another sort of problem, or with the resin side of things, is that it is difficult to get the Chinese factories to go outside their comfort zone because they don't see a financial reason for it. But yeah, I think I think that's the main difference.
All right, cool. I think we have set the table enough. I think everybody who's watching is very acutely aware that you two know your shit when it comes to making dice.
Yeah, cool.
So let's get to the darker side of the industry and the part of the industry that has had Twitter abuzz. Now, I'm going to give my side of things really quick, right? Because for years, I have only touched like official stuff when it comes to D&D, like, or stuff from big enough people like Geek and Sundry, you know, or official Wizards of the Coast stuff. I have not, you know, touched much of the indie scene or like the homebrew scene or anything of that. So in the last like 2 years, I've just been seeing a slew of shit. And so I remember actually hearing about Kraken Dice because I'm like, oh, somebody other than Chessex. Interesting. And then Kraken. And then the infliction on Kraken started changing about 4 months ago. Kraken. And now we're at this point where a lot of people online are pissed off. You know, for those unfamiliar with the situation, let's just hit some metrics. About a year ago, Kraken did a Kickstarter. They had 12,257 backers. That pledged over $1,024,774. Now, there is a massive amount of online resources that you can find to track this entire story from start to finish. There is a fantastic Reddit post that details everything start to finish. But I'm not here to do a chronological, you know, timeline of events. I'm here to get the words from two people very involved in this industry, how ethically things have been affected by what's going on with Kraken and what's going on with some other dice distributors. Mark, I know recently you had some of your designs, some of your cast-offs attempting to be sold, you know, on an online marketplace very cheaply. So I guess with that lead-in, let's talk about ethics in dice, which is a sentence I didn't think I was going to say 2 months ago, but here the fuck we are.
How did we get here?
How did we get to dice being such a cutthroat industry?
Well, the interesting thing about that is that they're the only ones that practice that. My issues initially with Kraken stemmed from their marketing. Our community, because it gives people the opportunity and encourages people to play people other than themselves, tends to attract a lot of people that typically don't necessarily have the best social skills, right? But once they get into character, they are absolutely fucking amazing. And there's a lot of anxiety and a lot of depression that I see coming through, a lot of other mental health issues. And it's not like our community is the only one that has these, but we're more open about it, shall I say.
Right.
And the FOMO, the fear of missing out marketing that Kraken has used since they launched their Kickstarter, absolutely appalls and disgusts me, because it preys on people's weaknesses that they are chemically imbalanced quite often to not even control. Impulse control, anxiety, like a stat that I would love to be able to document, and I don't think it's actually humanly possible, would be how many hours of work have been missed because someone didn't get a Kraken set because it sold out. How many people have spent days crying because they didn't get a set. And I'm going to be clear, some of Kraken's designs are really nice. I have no problem saying that, but when they start targeting people in every single release, all 117 of them. Well, actually, no, the last couple are interesting to me about that. But so, you know, and then finding missing stock. you know, of
Hey, Paul.
their best sellers. Ooh, you know, all of a sudden, oh look, I found missing stock. Fuck you, you did. Like, if you did, then you're a shitty business manager. Straight up. I can tell you. I have 300 plus sets of dice that I can resell right now in my basement. I can tell you roughly how much I have. I actually need to go down tomorrow and count them all out so that I can update my stock accordingly. But their excuses for things, and the FOMO marketing is what drew my initial ire. And the fact that they were months and months late with their Kickstarter fulfillment, and yet still capable of pumping out at least one design a week. I mean, 117 in 18 months. I don't know what the math is. Someone on Twitch can figure that one out. But that's a lot of bloody dice, and I can tell you that is not cheap to fund.
Yeah.
Right? It's like,
I know before the interview we said we weren't gonna like talk too much about money, but if you could just like, you know, without getting into the nitty gritty, the, you know, specifics, ballpark me what, you know, like just
I did
1,000, 2,000.
okay. So I did a rough math thing, and this was based on when they had 92 or 94 sets released. So I mean, we're 23 back now. At minimum, they grossed 1.5 million, and that's being incredibly conservative. And at most, they paid roughly, I think I figured it out, to around $375 to $400,000. So at most, they're still netting 1.1 million off of those 92 sets. Now, Deck being over in China, he can tell you roughly prices for machines and what we've discussed in terms of machines and stuff like that. With their Kickstarter alone, they actually had enough money to fund their own factory. Easily. They could have easily started their own factory and controlled quality right from the get-go. One of the biggest issues with their Kickstarter was the renders, because there's no way to turn RGB colors into CMY colors, or sorry, CMYK colors. I mean, there's stupid online conversion things, but let me tell you, they're not right. And either way, then you still have to factor in the plastic. Like that's why these dice colors that people are receiving now, particularly for the ethereal sets, oh, and that Dragon's Egg one too, are so far off, because I guarantee you they didn't invest any money in actually getting physical samples of those dice before they put them into production.
Okay, so let's try
or maybe they did. I mean, but it doesn't seem that way.
I want to try to keep things going in, you know, as much of a chronological order of events with them, because, you know,
there's a lot of stuff.
There's a lot of stuff, but B, I mean, you know, there's no one here to defend them. I don't know. You know, as much as what they're doing sucks, I do not want to just, you know, be sitting here curb stomping a company that cannot defend itself. So I just want to try to, you know, move as much with what information we have in a straight line. So
yeah, I mean, if I could just say something quickly, I think talking about ethics and stuff like that, I don't want to comment on them as like on their personalities or what I perceive as what the impression I get from them on Twitter. What I know facts from working with, because I work with these factories in China, and ethically they have not told the truth about a lot of things that I know to be not true, specifically not true, like impossibly not true. So I think like
how in depth on that can you get?
Say again?
How in depth on that can you get, Deck? Can we get some specific examples? Anything that won't get you sued.
Examples, the amount of dice that they can buy, like what runs they can buy, like, and how long it takes for that stuff to be made, and the fact that they still haven't received stuff from the factory from their Kickstarter order. That's impossible. It is impossible for the factory, because Kraken's orders are not that large in the grand scheme of all of the dice that are sold through these Chinese factories. they make out that $1 million is a lot of money. It does buy a lot of dice. It actually buys about 120 different sets of dice at the minimum order quantities that the factories do, which is ironically similar to the amount that they've sent out. The problem I have is like the FOMO, the fear of missing out marketing. It works, good for them. Not something I would pick. But the fact that they've quoted that the manufacturer is having problems with this, not true, because they use the same manufacturer that we use. The fact that the manufacturer says there's minimum order quantities of like 500, no factory makes 500 sets at the moment. So it's impossible. So it's like I'm not trying to burn on the Kraken, but these are facts that are not true, and I think the community deserves to at least get the truth. If something takes too long, if they're having a problem with fulfillment, fine. Be honest about it, and the community will support you. But quoting and blaming suppliers, blaming manufacturers when they're not doing anything wrong is totally misleading the customers, and then that's why they have to backpedal and do stuff like that. So anything I say will be based on facts that I know rather than my opinion of them as a company.
Yeah, they certainly been very quiet in the last couple of weeks. I think their last tweet was on the 2nd of July, and I'll give them the benefit of the doubt on that one, because that's 2 days before America shuts down to just destroy itself with alcohol. But at least by the 6th, we should have heard something. And I guess looking at a lot of their tweets too, there was no information about any of their Kickstarter stuff, commenting on any of their Kickstarter stuff. It's all been just, hey, would you like to buy these dice? Now look at these dice. Now look at these. Scrolling through their, I only went about 100 tweets back just to see what they've been talking about recently on Twitter, and not a damn mention of their Kickstarter. Maybe one or two, and in their half-hearted attempts. A lot of it is, showing new product, which again seems to be, listen, I'm not morally the best person, but at the same time, if you're, you've got people begging for the dice that they paid for over a year ago, and you're marketing and modeling, your new aerospace fucking aluminum blue dice, you're doing something wrong, Dick. You need to be focusing on the people who've already paid you money. So from here, we have a bit of a problem. People aren't getting money back. Ethics are thoroughly compromised.
We've actually seen in the background of sample shots we get for some of our customers, actually seen sets of Kraken dice in the background that they said they weren't producing yet as well. So, it's a bit. Yeah, I mean,
like from a dice business perspective, every single set I've ordered has been at least 1,000 sets. Most of them are 2,000. The only sets that I was able to actually talk my manufacturer down into giving me fewer. They gave me a lower MOQ, which was 400, but those were for my D6 sets and my D10 sets from the Kickstarter. Like a standard poly set, if you're dealing with resin, you're 1,000 to 2,000 typically. Actually, resin or acrylic. So that's definitely one of the things where, from someone who's on the exact same footing as them in terms of orders, like my Kickstarter, I think by the time it was all said and done, I think I figured it out to being about 13,000 sets that I'm getting made across essentially 8 designs. So I mean, I don't have any crazy major orders. Like my 2 biggest sellers in the Kickstarter were Neapolitan and Kiwi. They were very close. They were both a little over 2,000 sets is what backers pledged for and requested. One of the things that I struggled with at the very beginning, after I was successfully funded, was whether or not I would release new designs. I didn't want to put my business on pause for 7 months, and at the same time, I wanted to, and ultimately I did, end up making sure that everything was going smooth with my Kickstarter before I did anything new design-wise, because that way at least I could say to my backers, I didn't use your money. Your dice are being made. And as it stands, I'm looking to probably deliver about a month and a half early over my presumed deadline, which was November. I think I'll be shipping out mid-September to late September if all goes well.
Right.
And as far as I know, it will. Right. So I mean, that's 5 months from the beginning of a Kickstarter, or just wait, is that? Sorry, let me. Anyways, keep going. Math is not my friend.
Well, that's why we have math rocks.
Yeah, true. But when it comes to like shipping and problems on the Chinese side of things, obviously, Deck, this is your area of expertise. They've been, Kraken has been noted as saying this takes 5 times longer to make than this, and then a couple weeks later saying that the thing that took 5 times longer actually is the one, or the other one takes 5 times longer to make than the other one, and they waffled back and forth. Like, realistically, because again, you're there on the front line, you get all the information. How potentially, like, far back could have their stuff, like, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's sit here for a second and say everything went as wrong as it possibly fucking could. How far back would they have been set, realistically?
If everything goes wrong, you're looking at maybe 3 months for samples and 3 months, 3.5 months for production. Everything gets made at the same rate. There is no, this is faster, this is slower. Everything gets done. They're massive factories that employ hundreds of people. They get through these dice like hotcakes. They are fast at everything. So worst case, I would say 6 to 7 months. And that is unimaginably, horrifically wrong, which has never happened before. But benefit of the doubt, by the 6th or 7th month, they should have had all of their dice arrived if they ordered them when the Kickstarter and the backer kits and all the surveys got filled in, which then leaves the question of fulfillment, which is a whole another kettle of fish. But that's the estimate I would give. If things were going average, I would say 6 months, and if things are going well, then 5 or 4 months. 4 months if you're really lucky. But yeah,
right.
So
I'm sitting at about 5 months for my acrylics to be produced and manufactured, and probably 6 for my resin is what I think.
And those estimates are at today's rates, where loads more people are getting samples done. Back then, Kraken was the one of the first to get their own stuff done. So back then, I would say it would have been slightly shorter, maybe 1 or 2 months shorter than 7 months.
Right. And again, there's no one here on their side to defend them, so I don't want to like speculate too much on their business practices. But I mean, from where I sit and from the I wanted to do very light research on them. I didn't want to come in here, with a bias. I just wanted to see what people were saying, see what facts we have, and work off of that. And I mean, from my perspective, where, it kind of looks like this. They got picked up by Critical Role. Whenever Critical Role flashes something on screen, some product, it is going to get a lot of buzz, get a lot of mention. And Critical Role has introduced probably more people to this hobby than maybe anything else. It is the thing that sucks in people from the outside the easiest. And so suddenly they've got a lot of steam. They've got, they do this Kickstarter. They get a lot of backings for these dice. And, things keep getting messed up. Things are coming in wrong, left and right. And then they're also cranking out all these new dice. Same time, we've got the rise of all these new indie dice makers. And at the bottom, the bottom line is maybe we can hope that, they're just making poor decisions and they're in a panic. But, a lot of their marketing up to this point has been very smart. And, like you said before, Mark, their fear of missing out marketing is definitely something that, targets a very specific kind of person, a person who wants to have every set. Hell, Wizards of the Coast does that with their special edition book covers. The first thing I said when the new Avernus book is coming out, then they're like, and we've got a special edition cover. Shit, now I got to camp out a comic book store.
Mom, can I get $50?
Instead of being able to put off an adventure book that I'm really not going to use and I'm just going to cherry pick ideas from, instead, nope, now I got to go get it. And it's the same thing with Kraken Dice, except for, Kraken, people who barely play still love to collect dice. It's that one thing that brings everybody back. It's that one object in D&D that is, spammable, collectible, easy to purchase. And I can definitely see how people could get sucked into wanting to have that specific product. I think the big scary thing that's going on, and I think this is where we kind of work together here, and we're not going to solve all the problems, but I think everybody on the internet needs to have a discussion, because this is turning people off of Kickstarter, which sucks. There's a lot of very creative, smart, people who want to try to enter this space, and they want to make products. And, having Kraken, who was supposed to be the big boy in the indie pool, kind of shit out on them, has really left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouth. And one of the things I kept seeing on Twitter over and over again about Kraken is, going forward, how do we ensure ethics? And I really want to get both of your guys' perspectives on that. How do we guarantee an ethically, somebody who's going to do what they say, you're going to get your shit on time, and they're going to dot their lowercase j's and cross their t's? How are we going to get that going forward?
You know what? You're not. Plain and simple. You can't confirm ethics online. You can't confirm ethics as a consumer, unless you're willing to dig deep and do some research. I always say, go with your gut. Do your research. Like, if something feels wrong, if something feels wonky, just check into things. Like, I wish there was a way to sort of set up ethics and have it, guaranteed that, if I buy dice from, whoever, that I know that I'm getting an original design and that they're going to send it to me on time and that they're going to charge me a fair price and, all those other things. But realistically, ethics in business is much rarer, and I would say it's rarer than common sense, which I consider to be one of the rarest commodities on the planet. I wish it was easy. I know a lot of people look to me as someone to sort of champion ethical makers and ethical businesses, and I definitely do my best. And I also don't always do my research. There's been people that have sort of snuck onto my Twitter, right, where I just give a cursory glance and the first 5-6 tweets look great, and then all of a sudden I find out that they're gatekeeping, right, or they've got some racist or anti LGBTQ plus stuff going on, right, and all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, I'm not perfect. I'm one man who's trying to run every aspect of a business that he is literally learning as he goes.
Same.
Yeah. Where ethics really kicks in, I think, is more through accountability. Be accountable, be respectful, and like, ultimately, I don't have a business if I don't have customers. I don't have customers if I keep lying to them, if I lie to them at all and get caught. Like, the challenge with lying is that you have to remember what you lied about and who you lied about it to. That's why I prefer to be honest, because you know what? The answer is going to be the same no matter who you are, no matter what time you ask me. Were my first molds screwed up? Yeah, they were. So I paid an extra $1,000 and got them fixed. Did I want to? No. Was my shipping partner shady? I found out day before. Yeah, they were. Day before my Kickstarter ends, one of my shipping partners calls me up and says, dude, the hammer's about to drop on me. If you need to throw me under the bus, please do. And I totally understand if you don't want to, continue doing business. So I simply severed relationships, just that simple, because I look for good people to be in business with versus good businesses to be in people with, right? Like, ethics is tough to document. Ethics is tough to prove. Um, Lack of ethics is far easier, but once again, then you start going more into personal biases and opinions on things versus actual facts. That's my take on it.
I mean, like, I think the way I see it, ethics-wise, is we see it from a slightly different angle because we're here with all the Chinese manufacturers. There's sort of two different ways that I think about it. I think from the wholesaler, the factory side of things, which is my end, I think we have a responsibility to be more honest with the prices of things, not rip people off ridiculous amounts. Molds, okay, any dice makers out there,
Oh God.
get quotes, get more quotes than one. I mean, I think from a wholesaler's point of view, it's our responsibility to be ethical with our customers, not rip people off, and then that in turn, dice makers, I would suggest, if you've got an idea for a dice, you want to do a Kickstarter, you've got an online store, don't just go to one person, one wholesaler, and get a price from them. Go to 4 or 5, speak to many different people. Don't just go to the first person, which is what most people do. That then holds us accountable, wholesaler-wise, to be more ethical with our pricing, more ethical with our timing, and what we provide for people. And then from the other end, like Mark said, it's really difficult to know if a company or a dice maker or seller is doing things ethically, is a good person, is a good business. So what I think on the Twitter sphere and on social media, I think what we should do is people should shout about who's good, who do they like, who do they have good customer service for. Instead of, oh, I got my dice, they look nice, it's like, I spoke to this person at this company and they were fantastic, they were good. And in the same respect, if they had a bad experience, they should shout about it. This whole Kraken thing has come about because people have taken to Twitter and started moaning about stuff. If nobody did that, I think Kraken would still have the stellar reputation that it used to have. So I think to make things more ethical, it's like, just to recap, it's two sides. The dice makers have to hold the wholesaler and the manufacturer more accountable.
Mm-hmm.
And then the customers, the end customers, have to shout about who they like and who they don't like enough for other people to see it. But that'd be my 2 cents, so to speak.
Like in terms of like shouting out, the good ones. Like, as far as I'm concerned, there is none better than Die Hard Dice. My goal as a company, straight up, is to be uttered in the same breath as them with the same amount of respect, because I love Todd and Jesse. I love their entire crew, and whenever anyone's posting about like good dice makers to follow, I often get tagged, which is wonderful and flattering. And I always make sure to tag, Die Hard Dice, Tabletop Loot, Liberus Arcana. They're all good people running good businesses that price things fairly. And Die Hard Dice says, if you've never bought from them, buy from them just to get your packing slip, because it's always got a really nice note, usually an extra set, and possibly some really cool art. Like, love those guys. Anyways.
If you want the dice to be the dice industry, the D&D industry, to be a better place, to be less toxic, like with this sort of the whole Kraken thing, I really do think people should continue to support these small businesses on Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
If people stop backing people on Kickstarter for these new dice, we're gonna miss the opportunity to turn the dice industry from swirls and acrylic to swirls and pearls. We're going to miss the chance to make the dice industry into what, like Monstrous Incantations and Greenleaf Geek, what they're doing, which is turning it into a craft rather than just a tabletop gaming thing. So yeah, I would suggest people to go on Twitter, search what people are saying, and then use that information to go ahead. But again, take everything with a grain of salt.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Final thoughts on Kraken, and then I want to end this. I want to end this on a high note. I don't want to end this as we're all just sitting here a little dejected about the world of dice making.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts from you two?
You know what? If you find a maker of anything, champion them wherever you can. like I'm not saying this for my sake, but you know, like there's people like Greenleaf Geek who when I came on to Twitter, you know, it took me under her wing. There's a lot of people that have nothing to do with the dice community that are part of the D&D community who are the giants whose shoulders I stood on, who gave me space to promote what I was doing when I didn't want, like when I didn't know how to promote myself. Like, you know, start threads where you let people tag themselves in the cool projects they're working on. If someone asks you a question, like, you know, if you have trade secrets, if you have special ways you do things, you don't have to share those. But I'm going to tell you with dice, it's really basic. You pick Pantone colors, you send them to someone like Deck. You get dice that look relatively close to those Pantone colors. Like what I do isn't rocket science. It's not special. I just have a unique take on things, and I'm vocal. But like this community is wonderful, and it's something I'm flattered and humbled to be a part of, and seen as someone who is a good strong member of this community. You know, so like for me, that's the best. Like business is great, that's wonderful, but at the end of the day, it's all about the people. I'd rather talk to Deck for 2.5 hours, and we talk business for 25 minutes of that 2.5 hours. The rest of the time we're talking about his kid, my kid, random little stories and stuff like that. Like those relationships is what makes this community so wonderful. Those games and stories that we tell together, like just, I don't know. I'm stoked to be in it. I'm stoked to be a part of it, and I'm never ever going to let. I'm going to do whatever I can to stop people from doing damage to it in any way, shape, or form.
Deck, you got any final thoughts with Kraken? Any final words, and then we'll wrap up with what you guys are doing next.
Yeah, I mean, like with Kraken, you know, if this ship is sinking, let them sink. Move on. Go support some guys who have some awesome Kickstarters. Support the handmade dice people, especially because they're the spearhead of the industry. They're coming up with the new ideas, and the community, the D&D, the tabletop communities. It's a fun, safe, friendly place to be. And if somebody's rocking that boat and sort of upsetting the balance of it, just ignore them. Don't buy their dice, and back all these indie people, because these small dice retailers, you know, we're going to go Tabletop Loot, Greenleaf, Die Hard Dice. In the UK, yeah. You've got Critic, D&D, DN Dice.
Oh yeah, Critic's wonderful.
Back these people, because these people are the people who are going to change the industry, not people with millions of dollars who do FOMO productions. And just be proud. Be proud to own people's dice that you like, and be proud to support your chosen people. Yes, you can go on Etsy or Alibaba and you can buy sets really cheap, but I think that you're sort of missing the whole community part of it then. And people support and like brands because of how they get treated by them. And this industry is one of the few industries that I know where a competitor will talk with another competitor and give them advice and help them out.
Yeah.
And let's not change that. Let's support that and keep it going.
Excellent.
There you go.
All right, so really quick, I want to open everything up to some live chat questions. We've had people kind of poking in and out throughout, and but we've been so busy and on course. Everybody, go ahead and throw what you got in the chat right now. We got a couple that I wanted to get to from before.
Nice.
One of the questions that we did get asked was all the picks on the Kickstarter. I do not know if this was directed towards you, Mark, or if this was Kraken.
Oh, I think that was Kraken.
But are they renders or are they not?
Okay, so I'll speak to mine just real quick. I only show the actual dice. The only time where I did not show the actual dice was with Butterscotch, but I did my best to describe it, and as soon as I had the samples, because I had to get them made after the Kickstarter launched, I posted them in Kickstarter updates. The only other one was that the Kiwi ended up with a nice goldenrod yellow numbers versus the brown, because the Kiwi were supposed to look like mint chocolate chip. They're an accident gone wrong. On in regards to Kraken, you can look at their Kickstarter. You just have to type in Kraken Dice, and you can see where they make note that almost everything is renders. I think they had 6 sets officially sampled in their hands at the beginning, but you can do that research yourself. That way you see it with your own eyes, and it's not just a competitor talking about a competitor that he's voiced his dislike for.
All right, let's see what else we got here. Nacho, call him out because you're closer to that side, and I didn't bring my glasses today.
Yep. So Shiny Mono Bear was asking, Dice Envy released Pumpkin Dice Latte, then a week later resellers got the same dice with different ink. Was that an example of factory foul play?
I don't think it's factories maybe messing up orders and then the retailer passing that on and not really giving a damn, I think. Yeah, it's the short answer. The factories do get things wrong quite often, but normally that's filtered out by the wholesaler. So for an end customer to get something wrong, it's gone through at least 3 different people, the factory, a wholesaler, and the retailer, and then it's shipped to them. So it should have been caught by them. If it's not being caught by one of those 3, then I would say...
No. The question deck is Dice Envy's a company. So they had a pumpkin latte design, and then a week after they got theirs and were able to put theirs up in their store, other resellers had their exact same design with a different ink color. So is that factory foul play?
Yes, that is. That goes back to what I said at the beginning, where somebody's design will get held up or shared during the sample phase and then sold at the same time to a wholesaler who will then sometimes not even wait for the original seller to put their dice out before selling it on. So yeah, that is a very clean and very accurate example of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And to be clear in terms of factory foul play, Kraken was a victim of it. They had a bunch of their designs stolen and sold by a couple of... So I don't care who you are. I think it sucks when your designs get stolen. Like, that's shitty because I know how much work goes into design, and regardless of the final outcome and how they've decided to conduct themselves as time went on, I'm sure their original intent was pure, or at least very close to it, and like they got shafted hard. But part of that is because they chose to not get samples made, I believe, because once you got the product in your hand, it's pretty easy to say, I did this first.
Yeah. As an example, when we get a sample back from a factory, we might get 3 to 5 sets of dice. The factory has to make significantly more numbers of those dice to actually produce a sample set. So the extra samples will get handed off to preferential wholesalers. Unfortunately, I'm not one of them. Otherwise, I'd be able to sell dice faster. But
you'd be selling ice cream dice before I sold ice cream dice.
Yeah, but I do think, and it touches on intellectual property rights over here in China, which is quite interesting. There are none. So even if you made as a dice, it's ridiculous. Like we have some wholesalers will make an agreement not to like share the idea with anybody else, but it's totally it's not
Worthless.
legally binding.
Yeah.
Totally worthless. Yeah, so as soon as the only protection you have for for your own lines and styles of dice is pre-orders. So when you get your sample back, you put a pre-order page up, which then sort of confirms that it's yours. So if somebody else comes out with it, you can say that they copied you. And the other one is just get it done as fast as possible.
Yeah.
Get your samples done, get your order put in straight away, which again, for things like Kickstarter, that's impossible to do because it takes a while for you.
Because it takes time.
Yeah. You go, Mike.
Get us another one, Notch.
So Evil Cheese Man is asking if you guys have an opinion on Lucky Hand Dice, and they also wanted to say thank you for taking time out of your days to come out here.
You're welcome. No problem.
Do I have an opinion on their dice? From what I've seen, they're gorgeous, and Lemmy, every personal interaction I've had with Lemmy has been absolutely wonderful. I know they're a little bit more protective over their processes than someone like me, but it's because they do something different. I don't know what it is, right? I have no idea. But, that's Lemmy's always been great to me. I think some of their designs are wonderful, and that's about all I can really say. I've only had nothing but good interactions with them, and Lemmy in particular. So that's my opinion. Are you familiar with Lucky Hand Dice deck?
No, I'm
No.
not. So I have zero opinion.
And then,
But after this, I will go and have a look.
Yep, me too.
Telemuse was asking about your opinion on Havesi's Dice Guy, and how hard is it to get two-tone dice currently?
I know why this question comes up. So this is what I have heard as a dice designer. I wanted to get a two-tone, half and half, yellow and lemon yellow and dark chocolate brown dice made. I do have it made now, but I had 2 or 3 companies tell me that flat out they would not do it. And then I did some research as to why not, and I knew it was going to have to revolve around the Havesi's guy. And from my understanding, and I have no experience with this, so this is just like other people's experiences or opinions that I've read, is that he likes to threaten legal action, and at the very least has a couple of different front-facing companies in China that you would deal with as a dice maker or dice designer, that are not willing to go that route. Or the other thing too, and it's because the one factory that's doing, well, not one factory, but the one company that's representing my float line for me, they have a lot of ethics. It's BestCon, and I found them wonderful to work with, and they so maybe the reason they wouldn't do the two-tone is because they had another client who was working on a similar design. I'm not gonna say, because it's all hearsay, and I've heard it more than once, is what I can say, is that he threatens legal action.
All right, final poll from the chat. Nacho, what we got?
Looks like the last question we have up here is from Keeper GFA. What about gemstone dice factories? Are they all in China?
Gemstones, so far, what I know, they are. We can get them here from wholesalers. We haven't had anyone actually request them through us yet, but yeah, they definitely are made here. I know where they're made. I just haven't made contact with the factory because I haven't needed to yet. But yeah, I would say they're mostly made in China.
All right. Let us wrap up with some bullet questions, and then we're going to let you guys plug everything you do, and then we are going to get out of here. So really quick, Mark, the other thing I really want to touch on, because we're looking here in a couple of months, we, the team, are looking to do some charity stuff, and your charity, the Forging Heroes Society, is something that really tugs on my overworked heartstrings. You're an educator, you spend a lot of time with these kids, and you get to play D&D. Really quickly, do you have any amazing success stories and positive impacts that you've seen on kids before and after exposure to D&D?
God, yeah. So what I'm most proud of is that the nonprofit was an accident. It basically, I'm gonna run through this super quick. People can catch up if they can. So basically, I realized when I ran my first D&D club that there was no way for these kids to play D&D after the school year was done, unless I somehow was able to provide them with the necessary materials. So I started fundraising, but in the time that I started running the club to the time that I started fundraising, I legally changed my last name. So when I started doing interviews, the school board didn't know that I changed my name, so they couldn't find me and couldn't hunt me down, basically, because they don't like it when you start raising money, because it shows that a school board can't afford things. So I raised over $5,000 in a few months, which was great and wonderful. I send kids, so basically the way I do things is first I go and I help a school club set up. So I give them core books, minis, battle mats, whatever I can, whatever I have around, whatever they request, if I can afford it at the time. And then I go back when their club is done, and I give some of the kids starter kits or the full core, like what I call the DM kit, which is like battle mats, 3 core books, minis, markers, and basically everything they need to run the game for the rest of their life. This year, I was able to branch into different provinces and into the United States, which was really cool, and support a couple of different programs. I'm supporting a camp run by DM Southie on Twitter. He's a great dude with a good heart. Little salty, but I can dig that because I'm a little salty. I've supported 2 or 3 different clubs down in the States. I've supported a few across Canada. So it's super amazing to basically be the D&D Santa, as I like to call it when I go back at the end of the year and drop literally hundreds of dollars of loot in these kids' hands. And, you know, it's with the support of the community, with people like Andrew, who wrote Flavor of the Month adventure for me, people like the Midgardia crew on Twitter and on Twitch, who have run at least 3 different charity streams for Forging Heroes and are currently in the process of working on a charity module for me to sell. And like they're like people just, and then people like Die Hard Dice and Tabletop Loot and Libris Arcana, you know, who give me dice and give me some of the simple supplies that aren't necessarily easy to obtain. I mean, now obviously dice are going to be a little bit easier for me to hand out, but a year ago that wasn't the case. So yeah, that's Forging Heroes. It's the reason Ice Cream Dice exists. I literally started this so that I would have a way to continue funding Forging Heroes without having to go and like search for $5 here and $10 there and plug all that work into funding. I figured plugging that energy into a business that could sustain a nonprofit was a smarter way to go about things. And so far, it turns out I was right. So,
all right. You also, as we all got to see earlier, you have that adorable little nugget.
Yes.
How old, as a as a D&D dad, how young do you think is the perfect age to start them playing D&D? What's your opinion on that? And then secondly, how young is the perfect age to accidentally kill a player for the first time?
Okay. So I think the time to start role-playing games is typically around 4, when developmentally, brain-wise, they can handle reasoning a little bit. Like you can reason with them, and it's not just like, I mean, the majority of the answers are still going to be because. But there are great systems out there like Monty Cook Games. No Thank You Evil is specifically designed for kids that are 5 and up. Babar says Power Outage is designed for kids that are 5 or 6 and up, because he designed it for as something he could play with his 2 daughters. There's a lovely person on Twitter called Scriv, with a V as in Victor, the Bard, who has created these wonderfully simplified character sheets for D&D for kids that are younger. So I think a good age to play with the kids. I love playing with kids that are 9 and 10, because they're still batshit crazy and impulsive and typically murder hobos.
Oh, yeah.
But eventually, if you're campaigning with them long enough, like you can drop in some hints, and all of a sudden you can see that character development. So one of my favorite moments from this year, and I DM'd with a co-DM both years. He's amazing, because where I suck as a DM, he excels, and I've got skills that he doesn't. Like it, and it also taught our kids that teamwork didn't exist only within the party, but also within the DMing of the game. So we start our kids. It's all homebrew. We literally make it up as we go, and we get the kids to give us a starting location and what they want to do, and then we go. So this year, they decided that they wanted to rescue the enslaved halflings from Santa's workshop. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, aka Bloodnose, was the big baddie. So he made it all the way to 9 months later, end of the year, last game. They've got their big bad guy fight, and me and John, my co-DM, we decided that I wanted to have Blood Nose not actually be bad, but be corrupted and originally good. And good intention, but too corrupt to be able to do it, and like externally corrupted, not internally. So one of our guys who's in the behavior class, and 2 sessions before the final one, melted down because he didn't think the story was going to go the way he wanted it to, and he had more familiarity with D&D than most of the other kids because he plays a bit with his dad. I decided to give him the moment where Blood Nose shares with him that he is not bad. So he already had an inkling of it, and he casts the magic, and it freed some of the corruption from Blood Nose's core. And Blood Nose looks at him and says, "Thank you. I never meant to hurt anybody. You freed me. Please please pass on my apologies. This was never my intention." And the kid started tearing up. And the other kids cheered. Like, they were like, "He isn't bad. He wasn't a bad guy. It was just bad things happening to him." And like those moments they're few and far between when you're playing with kids, because it's often you often don't have enough time to really go deep, right? Like, we play with these kids for an hour and a half, 1 day a week. And ultimately, 20 minutes to 30 minutes of that is them goofing off and us trying to get them focused. But that work is worth it for those shining, bright, beautiful little moments where you watch a kid damn near tear up because you told a good, compelling story together. Like, yeah. So that was one of my favorite moments.
I fucking need Blood Nose art like now. I want it.
We never had any. Oh, here was another one from my first year. Another kid from the behavior class. This one's way shorter. So they're going in to a little cave, and they see some goblins that they assume they have to attack. And of course, it's their first combat, right? And they've literally been playing 20 minutes. Goes and almost fucking kills the goblin. Goblin was down to 1 hit point. Then he went to go, and next turn comes up. Goblin's still alive. He's like, "Can I save the goblin?" And he goes to try and save the goblin, and he fails his roll to convince the rest. Oh, that's what it was. He wanted to do persuasion. He wanted to persuade the party to let him save the goblin that he just almost killed. Like, literally within seconds, he's like, "Oh, I don't want to hurt him anymore." Failed it. They managed to not kill that goblin during that round. So third round comes around, and he decides that he's going to try and use deception. And he's going to deceive them that he's going to take the goblin to interrogate him in another room. Rolls a nat 20. He just walks out with this severely injured goblin. The goblin gives him a bit of treasure, takes him to his little special hidey hole. But like, for the kid to flip from like, "Oh my God, I don't want to hurt this, like, I want to kill this thing," to "I don't want to hurt this thing anymore," was amazing. Because this kid, not known as a violent kid within the school, but like definitely had behaviors and wasn't always the easiest one to get along with. Could be quite combative and resistant, defiant, shall we say. But cool kid. Love that kid.
All right.
So
we're about to get out of here. Last question I want to throw at Deck, and then I want you to plug all your stuff. Deck, what do you think is the future for DICE? Because, I mean, you're there on the front lines. You've got, I'm willing to bet, new people calling you. I'm willing to bet after this there's going to be a couple of people who are encouraged to send you an email to, maybe start figuring some shit out.
Yeah.
What do you think is the future for DICE now that we're kind of in, again, this golden RPG age?
Yeah, I would say...
Supplies.
Me, I am the future. No, I would say, look, like I think I mentioned it before, look on the Dice Maniacs Facebook groups. Look at these people who make handmade dice. That's the future. Crazy pigments, crazy effects, things suspended in dice, things printed on dice, different effects on the outside. Metal dice is starting to become a thing as well. Like, not become a thing, it's obviously been a thing for a while, but people are looking at it from different angles. And again, like I mentioned before, all of these indie people coming through, they have new ideas, they have experience from other industries. You've got some with family members from NASA, some with the arty friends, some with like woodworking, some with stones, some with precious gems, and I just it's going to become a lot more artistic, a lot more handcrafted. But yeah, in China, we're gearing up, we're getting ready for it. We're lagging behind, which is why you're seeing the difference between these handmade dice and what's appearing in retail stores. But that's the way it's going to go, and it's going to be so fantastic, making all the mistakes along the way and
Yeah.
messing around with resins and stuff along the way. So yeah, that's my prediction.
All
And
right.
if I get it right, Mark needs to give me a free set of all of his dice.
Well, and tell them about your charity, because that was one of the things that actually we really related on from
Yeah,
from
plug
an
a
early
charity.
point.
Yeah, well, you said about plugging in a moment, but I guess I'll just plug it now. So we, alongside all this Cerberus stuff, we actually run a charity called dandschool.com, where we take rich Chinese kids, charge them for English classes, and then use that money to support hundreds of families that can't afford it, teaching them English, DJing, dancing, yoga. I don't do the yoga myself. My wife does that. Um, and
I'd pay
we
to
also
see that.
support. Oh, you'd regret. We also support some schools in Africa, sending them materials, lesson planning, and also support foreigners to come to China and have an awesome time with us doing it all. So yeah, that's my plug. We
You're
also
looking
do
for
play.
volunteers.
They're looking for loads of volunteers. We're pretty well funded through the fact that we can take new students on to charge, but all the money we get goes towards getting volunteers. They can come here, stay for free, stay for a month, stay for 6 months, 2 years, and help us teach, help us come up with some materials for other country schools, and basically just provide some education for those who are unfortunate enough to have it. We also play D&D, Power Outage. We want to get the other one Mark mentioned.
No, thank you, Evil.
That one, we want to get that one going as well. And yeah, so if you go on holiday to China, hit us up. We'll give you somewhere free to stay, and we'll get you drunk. Oh, and we'll teach as well. Yeah.
Yes. All right.
Yes.
Last one, Mark. One drop for Flint is how I got to know you in the first place, and how I was able to contact you to get you on here. I'm fucking thrilled for that. I'm still looking forward to getting involved in any way I can, because we all, here at the DM Vault live in the Great Murder Mitten, and Flint being without clean water for almost, or actually now we're over 1,400 days is a fucking tragedy. So please tell everybody about that, how they can get involved, how they can help. Then we're going to do all our shit and we're out of here, folks.
Okay. So, being Canadian, the concept of being without potable, drinkable, fucking livable water, like, I thought the Flint water crisis had been dealt with years ago. And I mean, part of that is because I don't really watch the news. I don't really follow too many news things because I find too much negativity in there. But the way it came about was me and the friendly the friendly Dungeon Master No More crew were sitting around talking about what they wanted to do for their 1 year stream. I joined the group December, January, somewhere around there. So I'm the new kid on the block, and I don't quite consider it my stream yet, but it's close. But I'm definitely family. Anyways, so we were sitting down and we decided we wanted to do a charity stream. And Hannah, who you had on the show, Opheliac with an X instead of the E on Twitter, brought up Flint, and instantly, I don't think any of us took a breath between her saying Flint and us saying yes. So we are partnering with D&D Beyond. Obviously, Matthew Lillard was a huge boon to us at the very beginning, seeing if he would be interested. As it turns out, he won't be able to make it because it's his parents' 50th anniversary. So, I mean, hell yeah, go to that, right? But he got us in touch with a lot of great, amazing people, and the community has rallied around what a lot of people didn't kind of necessarily know about me at the beginning of that within the crew, is that once I have an idea, I take action. I don't really sit on things. It's one of the reasons why I have a hard time pacing myself between releasing lines. Like, I really just kind of want to release my Halloween line now, even though I said August 1st. But the One Drop for Flint crew, we have seen support from dozens and dozens of individual makers and creators, larger known companies. I don't want to say better known because that's not fair and that's not how I see things or how we see things. Like Dogmite Games has donated this gorgeous one-off One Drop for Flint DM screen that is stunning. We don't really want to give it away, but we have to. And just so the goal is to raise as much money as we can, go to Flint in person, play D&D with anyone who wants to, and buy literally a metric shit ton of water and give it to that community. Deck actually is helping us out with a lot of things, because drinkable water is an issue in China every day as well. So he has access to some things on a very cheap level that could help the people of Flint. We're still trying to figure out the logistics of what he can help with that will be usable in the States in terms of that. But it blows my mind that people are without drinkable water in what is, considered the greatest country in the world, and the top of the first world countries. How do your governments fail you that bad?
It's a very long story, but I mean, to just chime in on that briefly, 24 pack of bottled water, $2. For every $2, you're getting a family drinkable water for 2 days, or water to cook with, water to clean with.
Yeah. So let me just plug those things. So we are One Drop for Flint on Twitter. There's also I believe it's a WordPress.onedropforflint.com website. Either way, if you look for it or you go to Twitter, you'll find it there. There is a donation form. So if you have anything that you're willing to donate, you can go there. You can fill it out. We'll take all your information. It'll stay safe with us. If you want to donate cash, there's a Ko-fi set up. We also have the ability to run literally a 24-hour charity stream because D&D Beyond is helping us by hosting us. We have 5 or 6 different streaming groups that are joining us that are going to run different time slots. Hobart, the dad of the friendly Dungeon Master No More crew, is writing a specific adventure that we're hoping every group will run, even if they choose to run it in a different system, that will be semi-reflective of the actual water crisis in Flint. Because as fun as D&D is, we also all know that sometimes it can really hit the heartstrings, and we can actually talk about important things using these stories. And we're choosing to use this platform and gaming and the generosity of the D&D community to help the people of Flint and show them that someone still cares. Because I would imagine that if I were a Flint, Michigan native or citizen, I would feel abandoned at this point in time by my government, by my local politicians, by corporations. I mean, yeah,
as somebody with friends from there, they do.
I get emotional and like I have very little direct connection to it because it's fucking ridiculous. It's just, yeah. But we're gonna make an impact.
Fucking
and with people's help, we're gonna make a massive impact, and it won't be long term, but it will be massive, and it will show the people of Flint that gamers care, that this community sees them, values them, and wants better for them, and will work towards getting things to them. From a group standpoint, our goal is to all find a way to afford to fly to Flint for a weekend. Obviously, we're not going to take any of that out of the funds because that's counterintuitive and kind of grandstanding, but we're all going to do our best to make it to Flint, and I'm pretty sure we'll have an open invitation to this wonderful community for anyone who wants to come out and help us hand out water and load it up on the trucks. Let's go. Let's do it. All right.
Well, me and Nacho will be there with our big strong backs, and I look forward to buying you a beer. We are out of time today. Let me just really quick. Oh, you got one last thing for me, Mark?
No. I'm just stoked. This has been great and wonderful.
All right. So we are the DM Vault. Let me just storm through a whole bunch of shit. First of all, thank you very much, Mark and Deck. This interview was awesome. Thank you to everybody who's been talking and chatting. I saw a lot, and there's a couple of things I really want to touch on. Yes, we do want to do more interviews. I am currently sliding into the DM of every fucking person I can think of who I really want to talk to, and I've been getting a lot of positive responses. It's just setting the stuff up and getting it out there, and I don't want to announce anything. I don't want anything out of the oven before it's fucking cooked. But trust me, I have a lot of really cool people coming up. I have a lot of people, especially on the, females on, who work in D&D and people who with LGBTQ and stuff. There's a bunch of people I really want to get on the show, but again, can't announce anything quite yet. As far as what we got going on in the future, next Sunday at our normal 4 o'clock show, it's just going to be us, the boys, in the studio. We're going to be talking about liches and Dungeons and Dragons. We're going to get to our advice roots and all that stuff. The week after that, I think we're going to do something really fun for Shark Week. We're going to write and talk about Jaws as the perfect one-shot. So jump in for that. That'll be a lot of fun.
Jake keeps trying to fight Sharknado.
I keep fighting. I do not want Sharknado.
Sharknado 1 through 5.
Okay, you kiss my ass. If you've enjoyed today's content, you can find us at Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch / the DM Vault. Everything is there. We love meeting new people. We love talking to people in the community, and we really love hearing your guys' ideas and what you want us to do next, because we'll fucking take any advice we can get.
So yeah, feel free, slide into our DMs.
Yeah, slide into our DMs.
Don't wait
Tell
for
us
Jake.
what you want. Tell us what you want from us, and if you want to be on the show, I'd be more than fucking happy to have anybody. Yeah, that's our show today. Please go follow Mark at Mark. Give your Twitter at Twitter so I don't fuck it up.
It is I Scream, as in yell dice, because there's a guy who owns Ice Cream Dice in Africa and hasn't tweeted since 2017, but I'm not bitter at all about that. Everywhere else you can pretty much find me as Ice Cream Polyhedrals. That's my Instagram. That's the Facebook. Tumblr. I'm on there. I think I'm Ice Cream Dice. I don't know. Whatever. I just cross post from Instagram. Makes my life easy. But yeah, Twitter's where you're going to see 99.9% of the action, especially if you like me when I rant.
Hell yeah. Deck, where can we get you at?
At CERBERUS Supplies. So 3-headed dog supplies. Just hit me up. And if anyone ever has any questions about anything, I'm totally transparent and honest with anything. So just hit me up. No problem.
Thank you so much, everybody. This stream has been fantastic. Hopefully we'll get this uploaded to iTunes and everywhere else where we get our podcasts uploaded to. We're going to try to get that done within the night. But with that, Nacho and I have work in the morning, so we're taking off. We love you all very much. Thank you again to Deck and Mark for having such an amazing stream with us, and we hope to see you all very soon. Goodbye.
Awesome. Thank you.
Have a good night.